Alright guys, it's City the Beatmaster. I'm back again with another finger drumming tutorial, tips, and music production tricks. Alright, today we're going to be looking at one of my performances. The technique or tip that we're going to be looking at today is a trick that I use to stretch a vocal sample, and the trick heavily involved using the LFO filters found in Mpc Software. Alright, so let's get into that today and let's show you exactly what I did. Okay, you guys just saw the video that was master of the Mpc performance that I put on, and you guys got to hear the final version of the performance with the LFO tricks applied. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna want to look at a couple of samples that we have that I used to create that performance. So as you can see, I got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chops. I got about 6 sample chops, and each of them, each of those are going to be a little bit unique on the LFO side. So let's take a look at the LFOs. First, let's audition the first sample. Okay, so that's sample number 1. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we did on the LFO. Make sure you guys are also paying attention to the levels that I have this set at. This sample is pretty loud. It's set at level 50 right now, and the channel, the pad mixer, is set to, let's see, yes, the pad mixer is set to level negative 83 decibels. Okay, so that all of that is important. Your pad mixer level, and you want to make sure you have your program edit level, in sync with each other. So depending on how loud you have this, you're going to want to adjust this, or vice versa. So I have my pad channel at negative 138, and my pad edit, I guess you call it the edit mode level, for layer 1 at 50. So let's take a look at the LFO. On the LFO side of things, in our filter window, on this sample specifically, I am using a high pass filter, high pass number 1, and I have it set the cutoff rate to 58. Okay, so let's just audition that, and the same should be reflected right over here in the Q-Link window. So filter cutoff is set to 58, and that's for pad A1, which is my first sample chop. Okay, so let's take a look at how that sounds. Alright, so let's cut that off and get a closer look at what the original sound like. Okay, so already you could tell there is a lot more low end in the original, rightfully so. And what we did was we basically chopped the sample and we added a high pass filter on that sample. And I'll show you the sample. Here's the chop here. So you can tell right here, this is right when that spike in the sample. This is right when the low end kicks in and you get all the vocals in. And this is that long stretch of vocal is what I wanted to kind of make this whole beat around. And I wanted to stretch this as much as I could. And the only way I could do that, that I thought would fit the song right, would be to, instead of time stretching it or anything like that and playing around with the pitch. I like the pitch. I wanted to keep the pitch, and I just wanted to, affect this vocal sample in different ways. And the way I came up with was to use multiple different LFOs on the same sample chop. And it actually worked pretty well on parts of the instruments. The parts in the sample that didn't have any vocals, like this beginning part. So I would just, apply an LFO to the whole sample, and it would affect the instruments as well as the vocals. And I thought that made for an interesting dynamic between, the same instrument playing, but just in different ways. So let's go ahead and look at chop number 2. This is chop number 2. Actually, let me audition this one more time with the filter applied. So that was, again, remember, that was the original sound with a lot of that low end intact. So let's go ahead and apply that back on there to the first sample chop. And when you smile, you can already see that a lot of that low end is cut out from the sample, and that's from having the filter set to 58, and this is the high pass filter 1. I usually use the high pass filter 1 if I want to retain as much of the original vocal as I can, but cut as much of the low end that I can. So I still want it to sound clean and clear like the original, but I want to take out all of the low end, all of the bass. That's when I use high pass number 1. And you could tell as before I applied that filter, it had a lot of low end. So I retained her voice and I cut all of that low end using high pass filter number 1 set to level 58. Alright, so let's audition the sample chop number 2, and we're going to play it with the effects applied and then take the effects back off. Now, as you can hear in this sample, what I tried to do was retain as much as the low end that I could, and pretty much completely cut all of the high end. And the way I did that was I went over to and make sure you're paying attention to the levels. My level is set at 33 for the sample edit level, and the pad mixer level is set actually way over to plus 6 decibels. So I used low pass filter 8. Now, what I noticed from the filters, LFO filters inside of this whole time I've been saying LFO filters. What I mean is the low pass filters. Sorry. Low pass filters. This is the LFO filter right there. The low pass filters. What I mean by the low pass filters, low pass 8. What you can tell by using the low pass filters, when you get up into the higher numbers, for me it seems to be in some cases a harsher. It's like a harsher compression, or I don't know how I would say it, but it's a lot harsher the higher you go up, the chain of filters. So I wanted a more extreme, effect on the sample, as far as trying to maximize the low end as much as possible and cut the high end as much as possible. So that's why I went with low pass filter 8. Excuse me, I can't believe I kept saying LFO this whole time. Sorry about that. Whoever I may have confused in their beat making journey. So yeah, the filters, the low pass, the high pass filters. This was low pass filter 8. I set the cutoff to 61, and this is how it sounds. Again, a lot of the low end is kept, a lot of the high end is cut. And let's hear how it sounds normally. Okay, hold on. Forgot to do something. Some of these filters, like I said, them being so harsh, some of them you'll actually have to turn off to be able to hear what the original sounded like. So let's go ahead and cut it off, and let's play it again. It's probably going to be really loud, so I'll turn it down. So that is go ahead and turn that back on. That is a big difference from where we had it on the filter side. After we applied the effects to it, that's a huge difference. A lot more clear, a lot more cleaner. But like I said before, I was going for let me capture the low end, and the whole concept behind using this part of the sample was I wanted the vocal to sound like it was going in and out of a tunnel, like this kind of a filtered tunnel, and it would come in clean, and it would start off clean and then go in and get distorted and come back out on the other side clean again. And I think I really captured that inside the performance. What the end result of this was. And again, this is what the effect applied again. That real low end sound, a lot of that high end is completely missing. Let's take a look at our third shot. Now this one almost gives off the effect of a bandpass filter. I can't remember exactly which filter this was, so let's see if I get it correct. Nope, it was actually a low pass filter number 6. And that's the other thing about these filters. Sometimes you can almost trick it, or in a sense get the effect that you want without having to go to the filter is going to give you the correct effect. So in this case, it sounds like it has a bandpass filter on it to a certain degree, but I knew that I still want to retain a lot of that low end, but I wanted it to be not a harsh low end, but an almost cleaner low end, like a radio frequency low end. You can tell it's low end, but you can't really feel it as much. And that's a big difference between these two low ends on these two samples here, between chop 2 and 3. So chop 2 was really harsh, and then chop 3 was still low end, but it was a lot cleaner. Yeah, see, that's a lot cleaner. And again, that sample that I was riffing on was really, I wanted to simulate, to me, what sounds like a bass guitar player, hitting that same note over and over again, and that was the basis of the beat. So let's go ahead, and it's pretty much going to sound the same as the original. So let's go ahead and check. We're on chop number 4 right now, and I think we're going to start getting into different parts of the song where I chop the vocals now. So let's go ahead and audition that. And this one seems to be my main chop, I believe it was. It's still a harsh low end, but it's not as dirty as the first chop I had. Or sorry, the second chop. That one's a little bit more powerful. Yeah, this one, when the vocal chop comes in, it just hits a little bit more harder. And those little nuances you can really hear in the finished product. So, or finished performance. So that was pretty much almost identical to chop number 2. Yeah, chop 4 and 2 are pretty identical. Chop 2 is just a little bit harsher. Now let's check out the vocal chop. Let's actually hold on. Let's see the difference between chop 2 and chop 4. Chop 2 was set to 61 on the filter end, and it was low pass filter 8. Okay. Now let's see chop number 4. 61 again. Yeah, 61 again. And this was low pass number 8. Yep, as well. And the level, you want to pay attention to that also. Level 30 on chop 4, and level 33 on chop 2. And see, that's why I said you got to kind of pay attention to what your levels are set at. Because your levels are going to affect, the effects that you apply to them. And that's the reason why chop 2 has a little bit of a harsher sound on the low end than chop 4. Okay. So yeah, what you want to pay attention to when it comes to these levels between chop 4 and 2 is that I have the level on chop 2 set a little bit higher, and that is going to affect the overall sound after you've applied all of your filters to the samples. So that little nuances between the levels, I think it was only about 3 notches difference between sample 2 and sample chop 4. But that little nuance made for a harsher low end in the chop, and I think that really translates to the overall performance in the end. So make sure you're paying attention to the levels that you're setting, as they relate to the filters that you're applying to your chops. So let's take a look at that vocal sample now. And the vocal sample is really harsh. I wanted it to be just a very powerful moment in the performance. Like I said before, if I'm passing that vocal through a tunnel cleanly on the bass guitar parts, and then on the other side of the tunnel, by the time it comes out on the other side, I want the vocal chop to come out very powerful, once it goes through the other end of that tunnel. So that was kind of the whole concept for that song. And yeah, it's not going to be too much to take note on the main chop, chop number 5, because pretty much, well, as you can see, our level is pretty high up at +6 decibels. So that's just in itself is going to add to the powerfulness of it. Our level is set in our sample edit layer window to 33, and we are using a band boost. This is band boost number 6, and yeah, so again, it's on band boost number 6, which is going to do it's going to make quite of a difference even if you set it to it sometimes, I feel like. But as you can see, the cutoff is at 0, so sometimes I do things, and I think I actually did have the cutoff above 0, but I think I went on and I messed with the levels between the sample layer window level and the pad mixer level, and I felt very comfortable with the amount of power I was getting out of that vocal, with sample chop 5. So let's take a look at sample chop 6. And sample chop 6 to me represents the end of that tunnel. It's still filtered out, but it's starting to get a little bit more clear. And once it comes out of the tunnel, we go back into that, powerful vocal. So you start to hear it coming out of the tunnel, and the vocal chop comes in very clear at the end and very powerful. And I felt like that made the break in the beat. That was like the hook of the beat. So let's go ahead and play the full beat so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about. And let's just audition all those chops in sync. Okay, and here's the beat. tunnel of all of that low end. And you're actually going back in at certain points when the sample, the vocal sample chop goes through its course. And I kind of take you back into that tunnel and bring you back out again on the other side. I want you to kind of get a better understanding of how to use, these low pass, high pass, all of these filters that you get to affect the samples in different ways. And it just, gives you an overall just different sound, I look at this as one of my main draws for inspiration and one of the, one of my go-to techniques that I use, to just separate, from the pack, it allows my sound to just sound completely different from what you're used to hearing in a hip-hop record or a sampled record. So that's just like a really great tip and trick, and one of my go-to moves, for sampling period in general, whether it's a sample or original. I really like to play around with those filters and get, what I like to call almost a tunnel effect with the sample. And here you can get a better understanding of how it all cohesively fits together. If I just mute all the drums and let the sample play out. So here that is now. Sounds like you're in the tunnel, but not quite. Now you're fully in. And then there's pieces of little vocal chops that are coming out, and that's just, bracing you for when you get on the outside of the tunnel. I never want you to forget that maximum frequency that's on the other side. And I thought that little chop there brought a little extra flair or a cut through that low end. Now you're on the outside of the tempo. That's everything. That's the beat. So this just was a quick overview to show you how you can use low pass, high pass filters, to affect your beats and your samples in a very powerful way, in a very unique way. It's one of my go-to styles that I like to use for finger drumming. So that was just, a way to show how you can use low pass, high pass filters to really affect, your beats in a powerful way. It's really one of my go-to moves that I use, when I'm using any samples or anything in general that has to do with sampling. Even if it's an, original that I've created, I really like to explore the different depths of the low pass, high pass, band pass filters. And just really creates a uniqueness to my beats. And that's it. This has been another tips and trick tutorial on how to master low pass and high pass and band pass and filters of all types as it applies to finger drumming. That's it. I'm out. Make sure you subscribe and check out the other tutorials.